Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back. And if you are just tuning in with me for the very first time, it's so nice to meet you. And I'm really glad you're here with me today. I am your host, Heather Carey, nutritionist, chef, mom, and a woman who has been around the block with food. I want to open up about real food in relation to health, weight, and our bodies so you can make peace with what you eat. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Today I am with Tamara Zoner. Tamara is a speaker and coach who is on a mission to create greater happiness in the world by teaching individuals and groups the actions and habits of happiness. A show not tell single mom to 3 awesome kids and a karaoke enthusiast, Tamara demonstrates daily how to create a life you love. Energetic and enthusiastic, she brings a room to life with her positive presence, even when that presence is virtual. She can speak for hours on the habits and actions of happiness and how people can create a life they love through small, simple changes. With a blend of spirituality, self-love, and practicality, Tamara makes it feel possible for people to live more authentically, being true to themselves without trying to fake it, and shifting their relationships with themselves and others in a loving and respectful way. Tamara works with people through private sessions, speaking engagements, and her workshops, which are an experience not to be missed. We'll talk about that later. I want to hear more about that. So, hi, and wow, I know we could all use an infusion of happiness these days. So, I'm really excited to talk to you today. There's so much going on in the world, obviously. I mean, right, we've got the 24-hour news cycle, we've got just alarmist news all day long, not to mention just with ourselves, within our own just personal lives and our own little micro worlds. And we worry a lot. I mean, people are just filled with worry. That's sort of the theme I feel like a lot these days. So I'm going to come right out with it. And I want to know what the secret is to happiness, because I want what you have.
Big question, Heather. Way to go, right from the start. Yeah. So let me give you the definition of happiness that I use in my work, first of all, because I know if I ask 100 people what happiness means to them, I'll get 100 different answers. So the working definition that I use is that happiness is an inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on circumstances.
Okay.
An inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on circumstances, because so many of us have this thinking. We think a lot, by the way. We think around 60,000 thoughts a day, and primarily they are negative repeated thoughts day after day after day. And so we really want to work on catching those, but we think that, well, if this changed or that changed, or the news got better, or I got a raise, or my partner listened to me, or my kids called more often, then I'll be happy. And this is the big myth of happiness. It's not reality. The reality is that reality continues to happen. Life continues to happen. And we get to do the inner work that creates that peace and well-being from within, so that we can handle the external situations with more peace and ease and flow. And the secret is that happiness is a practice. It's a practice. Every day I practice my tools. I use my tools so that they're available to me when I most need them. Because if I'm not using the weights, I can't build the muscle. I won't be able to pick up the 4-ton horse or whatever it is that I need to pick up in my life, right? Sometimes our challenges and problems feel like a 4-ton horse. But if I'm working out, if I'm building muscle on a regular daily basis, then when the what hits the fans, I've got the skills and tools and practices in place. So when my brain goes, whoa, everything is scary, and we're in this fight or flight emergency response, it's motor memory that we've built. We know what to do. We know to take a deep breath. We know just by practice the skills that we can immediately call on to get us through life's challenging moments, because those don't go away no matter how happy we are.
Exactly, right. We're always going to come up with things that get in our way. And I love what you said about, this if only, because I think a lot of people, I mean, myself included, this is a practice for me too, that maybe back before I started practicing this more, but that if only you on the outsiders, would change, then I can be happy. Or if only the war in Israel would stop, then I could feel like I can sleep at night, or, all the outside circumstances. So I understand that this is definitely a practice, right? Happiness comes from within, your contentment, serenity, whatever you want to, call it, right? There's different names for it. But you mentioned that there's skills and tools and practices that you teach your clients. So what, because it's easy to say, just stop saying if only, like happiness comes from within. But what are the skills that you teach your clients to do on a daily basis?
I'm going to bring it down to like the 7 main habits of happiness, because the research has found that there are 7 main areas or habits of happiness. And we've also found that the biggest difference between happy people and unhappy people is simply that we have different habits. So it all comes down to these different habits of thinking and behaving, right? So inside and outside. So the first of the 7 is taking responsibility for your happiness, right? We were just talking about how if they
Hmm.
change, if they change, if that changed, then I'd be happy. But that's so disempowering, Heather. That's me just giving away my happiness to anybody out there who cares to take care of it for me. And it doesn't allow me to do it myself. So we take responsibility for our happiness, and we recognize that while we can't always change situations, we can always change the way that we think about them.
Hmm.
Okay, which brings us to the mind. So the mind, don't believe everything you think, is the habit we practice here. We question our thoughts, we clean up our thinking patterns, because we have natural negativity bias, right? This is why we evolved, because we did pay attention to the negative. It's why the news plays on that, because they know if they show you all the terrible things happening in the world, they're going to get your attention. And then what we do is we repeat those thoughts over and over and over. So on average, we have 60,000 thoughts a day.
It's
95%.
incredible.
I know, it's crazy, right? 95% of them are repeated, 80% are negative for the average person, right? If we do our work, we can flip that negativity bias into a positivity bias. And there are different tools that fall under each habit to do that. But we'd have to be here for several months to talk about them all.
Mhm.
um, so then we have the pillar of the heart. We talk about the heart. The happiest people in the world live with open, forgiving, generous heart. So if you have a habit of holding a grudge, being resentful, expecting others to change, that's a closed heart. We want to practice forgiveness, and forgiveness is a practice too. I swear I forgive my ex-husband like every other day. Right? Every other day we have to forgive ourselves, we have to forgive others for all sorts of things. So living with an open, generous, loving heart, a little bit vulnerable, it might be a little bit risky, but the risk is worth the reward. So the heart. Then we have the pillar of the body. We only get this one this time around, right? So are we taking care of our bodies? This is really vital in the habit of happiness. To be happy requires feeling pretty good. It's really hard to be happy if we're chronically ill, fatigued, tired, and vice versa. It's hard to be depressed if we're feeling really good in our bodies. So we want to take the best care of ourselves that we can. And this one can be really sticky for people, because they're like, oh, I don't want to exercise. I don't want to eat right. I want to overindulge, especially around the holidays. I want to, whatever, I've got to work so much that I only get 4 hours of sleep. But sleep, nutrition, and movement are the 3 main areas of the body. And we've got to, at least in moderation, take better care of ourselves, right? Take better care of ourselves. So then we have the soul. And this one, it doesn't matter if you believe in God, if you call it Mother Nature, Source, Spirit, the yada, yada, I don't care. What matters in this piece is that you believe that there's something greater than yourself. The happiest people in the world believe that there is something greater than themselves. And this allows us to foster that sense of connection with others, with nature, with animals, with all of life and beingness. And it allows us to kind of lean on something, to trust, to practice faith. And this area, there are tools like prayer or meditation. I consider yoga both an exercise for the body and for the soul. So things like that. Then we've got purpose. Cultivating a life of purpose and meaning is vital for our happiness. And I actually heard a research study on a TED Talk that said, and I can't cite it because I can't remember the TED Talk right now, but that said that they did a study of people in their 60s. And of the people who had no sense of purpose in their lives, their life expectancy was only 5 years. Whereas the research shows that happier people live on average 9 years longer than unhappy people. And so having this sense of purpose and meaning extends the life, right? Okay, so let's see. We've covered the foundation, which is taking responsibility, the pillar of the mind, the heart, the soul, the body. We have covered purpose and meaning. And so now we get to our relationships. It's what we call the garden in our home for happiness, our relationships, social fitness, as some researchers call it, right? It's so vital. So who are you spending the most time with? Are they supporting you, nourishing you, or are they kind of those toxic weeds in your garden that you really need to clean up? And in this area, we really practice on boundary setting and keeping healthy boundaries. Sometimes we're in a situation that we choose to stay in. Maybe it's a job or maybe it's even family that we're like, well, I can't really get rid of those people. I mean, you can. And if you choose to keep them in your environment, then there are ways to create healthier boundaries for yourself. And that's what we do in the area of the garden. And then just making sure you get around some people who are positive and uplifting, like a coach.
Mm-hmm. Right.
People doing this work together, that kind of thing. So those are the 7 main areas of happiness. And each one has layers of tools. And, not every tool works for every person or every project. And so I teach my clients a lot of tools and we try on different bits and pieces to see what really works for you, what resonates, and what feels good for you to use. And not everything feels good at first, and that's okay too. So it's authentic. It's an authentic practice where we get to feel all the feelings we feel.
Right. I'm sure sometimes you present some tools and things to try and it's like can be wildly uncomfortable because especially I'm just taking some notes here. I'm just wrote these down and I know, for me and for the people that I see as a nutritionist, the taking care of your body and then the purpose and meaning in life are like 2 that really stood out for me because I know women in midlife and going through the menopause transition and everything is a real wake up call or just a jolt, of who they are because women are suddenly starting to maybe gain weight. Their bodies are shifting. It's a very confusing time. And so it's a really challenging time to then feel happy in your body. And then also, the purpose, thinking I'm now an empty nester, my kids are out of the house. That was a purpose, a big purpose for a lot of women. And now what am I doing? So those are 2 that really stand out. But I mean, I know all 7 of these just really make a ton of sense. How do you tell me like some of the skills then you would practice with women who are just feeling like very frustrated in their bodies?
So acceptance is a skill, right? Accepting where we're at is a skill. It's a practice. And so, in that area, first we'd practice some self-compassion, some self-forgiveness practices. There's one particular tool called Ho'oponopono that I love to use. It's hard to say, but it's easy to practice. And if you want, I can teach it to you and your listeners just right now.
Sure, that would be great.
It's a very simple practice of 4 phrases. When you say these phrases, you can imagine you're tapping into whatever you believe is out there as your higher source, or nothing. If you don't, you can say these words just to yourself. It really doesn't matter. Again, belief systems are flexible. And the 4 phrases are, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It can be just as simple as that. And for the people who teach this Ho'oponopono, it comes from a Hawaiian technique. Dr. Hugh Len teaches it, and he calls it cleaning. Like we're cleaning the programming, we're cleaning past memories, we're cleaning ancestral crap that's built up over time that grandma passed to our mom, who passed it to us, and maybe we passed it on to our kids, right? So we're cleaning it all up. And I like to imagine it like a whiteboard in my mind, or if you're old school, you can go chalkboard, I don't mind. And I just imagine as I'm saying, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, that I'm just wiping that whiteboard clean.
So will you say those again? I'm just like taking notes. I want to I want to write these down. I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Thank you, I love you.
And are you saying these to yourself or are you saying these to like outside people?
Yes.
All of
So
it.
you can be saying it to yourself. You can be saying it to someone that you've had a challenge with. You can be saying it to an old event. You can be saying it to source. You can say it to anyone, and there's no wrong way. If you get the order of the phrases differently than I say it, that's okay too. We're tapping into that connectedness I was just talking about. Whatever connects all of us, we're tapping into that. And I like to just, there's a thunderbolt mudra that I don't know if this is video or not, but we just slide our fingers together, thumbs up, hands on heart.
Hmm.
This hand position is meant to inspire courage through challenging situations. And so I like to pair it with that and just repeat. And sometimes I'll use this when I'm having a hard time sleeping. Sometimes I'll use this if I'm having some repetitive thoughts, that I'm like going over a situation that I wasn't happy about over and over and over and over, and I can't quite quiet down my mind. Well, it's hard to just silence the mind. So if we replace it with those thoughts, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Try this on for like 5 minutes a day and see if it helps. It doesn't hurt to add in a deeper, longer breath with each phrase. It also doesn't hurt to add some language to it. When I work one-on-one with clients, I will take their particular situation and I'll add some wording after each phrase. So I'm sorry for calling myself fat. Please forgive me for feeling like I'm just too fat, tired, and ugly to do anything. Thank you for right now recognizing that I'm worth more than my thoughts are telling me. I love you and I deserve love and I'm worthy of love, no matter how my body is reacting to me right now. Right? So if we're menopausal or perimenopausal or post, wherever we are, whatever the situation, we can kind of add a little bit more love to the words to apply to our specific situation.
I really love that. And I just think just talking about it and just talking with you right now, it's very calming. And we're in a society where we're like, we need to get the answers quickly. I right now know quite a few women who are just like desperate to like get weight off. They can't get to this place yet, where they're just forgiving of themselves or they're just accepting that they're going through a change and it's all going to be okay. And just having, infusing some kindness and compassion And rather it's, whatever diet of the moment is like a quick fix diet, but now it's also a lot of weight loss drugs like Ozempic that I see women, they're just out of, it's a desperation move. And it's the opposite of this, but this feels very calming and nice and happy, you
Yeah,
know?
I think that from a calm place that we can actually make sustainable change. Because if we're in that desperate feeling of I've just got to lose those 20 pounds, or even if it's five, and we're in tension about it, right? We have tension and stress around it. Well, that's just creating more cortisol in the body, which is actually just holding onto the fat. Your body, your brain is like, nope, we need this. We can't change anything right now. So we've got to come back to, or at least try to practice coming back to a place of peace, because it's in this more neutral, calm state that our bodies will actually go, oh, we're safe, all is well, we have enough, we can make changes. And in crisis, we can't. We're not losing anything except for maybe calm, focused thinking, right? So it's from a
Exactly.
calm place that we can begin to be more rational about our bodies. And it all works together. So we're coming into peace, we're being more accepting, we're putting more attention on the health of our being than the weight of our body. And I think it's from that place. I hit that weight plateau a couple of years ago, and I was like, what the heck, man? I've never had a weight problem. I'm turning 49 this month, and all of a sudden my body was just clinging to this weight, and I was like, I don't understand what's happening. It used to be so easy for me to lose 5 pounds. So I tried working out really hard for like a whole year, and nothing happened. And finally I was like, well, I guess I'm just gonna accept this new weight and this new being. And in conjunction, so we can accept, and then we can also try different things on. I'm going to listen to nutritionists. I'm going to learn about my body at this age and stage. And I'll listen to like 10 different opinions and then pull what works for me into my situation. And so I tried a particular kind of diet. I'm not promoting any, and it worked for me. And as I cut out sugar, I felt better in my body. My joints didn't ache anymore. I had more energy. I was clearer thinking. And now, like, back into regular diet, everything in moderation, I find that even if I do go splurge at Starbucks, everything's cut in half. Like, cut the sugar pumps in half. It's even better that way, right? So we have to this is why happiness is a practice, because we develop so many different skills, and one of the skills that we develop in a practice of happiness, Heather, is self-trust. And we learn to tune into our body's own wisdom and the wisdom of whatever we believe is out there guiding us, if anything. And once we do that, it's so much easier to care for ourselves from a place of love and peace, which is really important.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think becoming really intuitive with yourself and trusting, like you said, is everything, I think. And then having something higher than you, higher power, source, right? Whatever we call it, is really important. And it just helps us stay a little more calm. I mean, I know from the scientific side, then when we're not calm, when we're not more relaxed, our cortisol levels are up.
Yeah.
We are in fight or flight. We are, our metabolism, so everything like gets whacked out, because we're like waiting for, something, we're waiting for the danger. And so it's so important to stay calm, especially when we're in midlife. Sometimes we used to be able to get away with things, right? But now, it's and and if happiness is the goal, and I think it's probably a goal for, I mean, who doesn't want to be happy,
Right.
feel content and happy and at peace, then, so we really do need to practice this daily. So I wanted to then just talk a little bit about this, your number 6, which is purpose. And again, we're talking in relationship to the women. I mainly see it as women in midlife and who feel lost. Suddenly they had purpose and then and I can relate to this. I have three kids who are now all out out of college, which I can't believe, and working and and do not live at my house anymore. They come to visit, so my identity as like that of like the mom, is, I mean, of course I'm still their mother, but I've lost that piece of me. So, and some women are just have been stay-at-home moms, like, and so they really do feel a loss of identity. How do you work with that? Because that's hard. It's scary when we're in our 50s, late 40s, 50s to think like I have to reinvent myself now, or like what am I doing the rest of my life? And how do you work with that to so people can just feel content and happy?
One of the first, that's actually where I start with every single client, wherever they are, is this. We do a clarity process to get them really clear on what they want their life to look and feel like now, from wherever they're starting. And you're right, for moms and parents in general, but specifically mothers, we're so wrapped up in our kids that when they leave, if we haven't cultivated purpose and meaning for ourselves separate from them, we're like, what now? I had my oldest go to college this last fall. So, and she just came home yesterday.
Mm.
So, but for me, I'm divorced. So my kids have been going back and forth between their dads and me every other week. So every other week, I have very little momming to do. And it's allowed me to really cultivate my own personal experience filled with purpose because I've got friends, I've got my business, I've got my clients, I've got my partner. And then every other week I've got my kids. Eventually they're all going to grow up. Mine are all teenagers now. So but they're on their way out of the house, right? My youngest is a freshman in high school. And instead of waiting until he's grown and gone to go, oh, what now? I've been working on the what now for years. And it's okay if you haven't. So we start with asking ourselves in shorter workshops, I'll ask just this question: what makes you feel alive? What makes you feel alive? Because many of us, especially moms, have put aside our own passions, our own hobbies, our own personal joys for our kids and our families. And so this is an opportunity to tap back into like, okay, before you had kids, what did you love to do? Did you love to sing? Did you love to dance? Did you love to paint? Did you love to work numbers in your head? Did you love to whatever, right? Did you love to talk to people? So could you now think of something that you could go do to cultivate that feeling of aliveness within you? Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's a part-time job, maybe it's going back to school, maybe it's knitting. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it makes you feel alive. And then for the clients that I work more long term with, we do a clarity process where I have them make a list of the 10 things that they want to be, do, feel, and have in their lives. And they complete the sentence, when my life is ideal, I am, and they fill in the blank. And that can be anything. I feel fit and healthy and energized in my body just the way it is. It can be, I have a deep connection with source. It can be, I am in the soulmate relationship of my dreams. It can be that I feel supportive of my children, even though they're grown up now and living their own lives. I still have this beautiful relationship with them. It can be anything. And so we narrow that list down to the top 5 because the brain can only handle 5 to 7 bits of information at any given time. And then I teach them how to actually lean into those 5 main things that make them feel alive. If they have written things that don't light them up, then I say, okay, start over, let's redo. Because it should feel juicy, it should feel vibrant. You should feel like that bubble up of joy, of excitement. You should feel, it's the point, and it should feel really good. And so we get to that top 5, and then I teach people how to align their lives with those things. so that each day feels more joyful and fulfilling. And I promise when we are happier overall, when we're experiencing more aliveness in our daily lives, all the rest gets easier. All the rest gets easier. The weight, the fatigue, the body changes, who knows, the aging partner who can't hear you anymore, right? The money you're putting away for college, and, everything gets easier when we take care of the inner world within us and we're doing the things that help us feel good on a regular daily basis. And this doesn't mean, Heather, that we're always going to feel vibrant and alive, because that's not what authentic happiness is. The beauty of this human experience is that we get to experience everything, right? If we're willing and courageous enough to experience myriad emotional states, that's when we have access to the super awesome highs, joys, passion, aliveness, happiness. And we will still experience the grief of our children going away, moving on, living their lives, or the loss of a loved one, or the frustration. I always like to use traffic circles as an example of frustration. Right? We'll still get angry, we'll still get upset, and we don't live there. We don't get stuck there. We move through the myriad emotions of the human experience with more ease and efficiency when we're practicing these tools and skills and habits of happiness.
So just listening to you, I'm like, yes, like, yeah, I get it. I want that. I'm sure everyone wants that. But I then was thinking some people, and I'll just stick with women, women in midlife, are just used to being really critical with themselves. I mean, it's the only way they know how to communicate. I get this because I used to be that person much more years ago. And, and then I really started practicing a lot more kindness and compassion with myself. I think it's, we've talked about this. It's like a game changer. How do you stop that critical voice? And how long do you work with people? Like, how long does this take to suddenly become a happier person?
Let's start with that question. So traditional wisdom says, oh, it takes 21 days to form a habit. That's incorrect. Scientifically, the research shows that it takes closer to around 72 days to form a habit so that it is, in fact, a habit and not just a new behavior. What I noticed, I used to work with clients for just one-off. Like, we'll spend a few hours together, or you'll do a workshop with me. Then I was like, that's not enough. They're having a good experience, but they're not creating sustaining change. And so then I started working with people for 3 months. And what I noticed is great. 3 months, 90 days gives them a pretty good foundation of the tools and habits of happiness. And then after a couple of months of not working with me, they'd revert back to old habits and come back. So then I decided, well, it's a 6-month minimum package now, one-on-one. Because what I see around that 3-month mark, right about the time that those habits are getting solidified, the subconscious mind goes, hold on a second. What are you doing? Let's go back to the old way. And unless people are in this container of support and accountability, they're like, oh, you're right. This isn't comfortable. I don't like this change. Let me go back and do the old way. That's what I know. That's what I like. That's where I'm safe. That's where I'm comfortable. So now I require my one-on-one clients a 6-month package. And do you know that every one of them has renewed? Like, I have never worked with a client for just 6 months.
I'm sure some people are like, oh, I have 6 months. I have to, like, can't you just give me the short version of how to get happy?
I have commitment issues too.
But I get it. I mean, I think that these skills, it's like a lifelong practice. I mean, it's really because we could get so distracted with so much going on in our lives in the world, and it's so easy to revert back to what we were doing. So I think, yeah, that sounds like it makes a ton of sense to get that, because right, you need to get out of the habit of like being self-critical, of being hard on yourself, of just feeling like I don't have purpose or whatever, whatever the the downside of it is.
Those critical thoughts are, and we definitely work a lot in that area, and there are very specific tools. I take people through some inner critic work. And you said, how do we stop it? Well, we actually invoke a stop word. So we create a word or a phrase that works for each individual, and we start interrupting the pattern of negative thinking, interrupting the pattern of critical thinking. And then, because, and most people might not know this either, we can't just drop a bad habit. We have to replace a habit. So, because the mind otherwise is looking for that thing we've been doing. So we have to replace it. So we take the bad habit, the negative critical thought, like I'm so fat and ugly, and we replace it with I am good enough just as I am, right? Or I am willing to love myself just as I am. I'll try loving myself just as I am, whatever, wherever you're at. I never subscribe to affirmations that feel like lies. We're going to find a little bit of truth, and we're going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes on, so that you, if that is your desire, can get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, but especially that inner critic gets quieter and quieter. And I can't say that it will ever fully go away. I've been doing this work for over 10 years. My inner critic still comes out to play sometimes, and we're like, oh, you're no good at this. Why are you bothering? And where my stop word used to be a little more aggressive, today it's more like, I thank you. You're trying to do your job, and I'm good. I got this. I'm fine. We're fine.
So it's nice to hear that you are also in a lifelong practice, right? So, right. And
Lifelong practice are the key words here. It is a lifelong practice.
yeah, and that doesn't mean that it's like overwhelming, like, oh, I'm never going to totally learn this. It just means that you need to always be reminded. And I love what you just said about, like, you're not just dropping a habit, but you're replacing a habit. That reminds me kind of like diet thinking, like going on to like some unrealistic diet rather than replacing, like, we want to change our food and our eating and everything, but we need to do it in a kind, loving,
Yeah.
and in a way that is proven to be working, not just some crazy, unsustainable 3 week
Right.
diet where we're losing 30 pounds in 30 days. And
Oh, exactly.
yeah. And so replacing, just making changes, but and change and infusing good habits, I guess, what I'm
Yes.
saying. So
Yes.
I've heard you say a couple of times that the research shows that I love research. I am a big fan of research. I don't like, when it comes to like diets and everything, I'm like, show me the money. I mean, like, you show me how this works, and that's great, but I don't show me some fad diet that like goes nowhere. Who's influenced you? I mean, tell me a little bit more about just the research when you say that.
Yeah. So the Berkeley School, that they do a lot of happiness research. I have read so many books. This is one of my favorites, and it's a new one, The Good Life. This is the longest study on happiness ever done, and that just came out earlier this year on the scientific study of happiness. And they're the ones who coined the term social fitness. So it's just a lot of study of positive psychology, which I study for fun because I'm a nerd like that. and I do love research. I love to have a study that's backed up. I love to be able to cite resources. They're somewhere on my computer. And then I studied with Marcy Shimoff, who wrote the book Happy for No Reason. So she's one of my mentors who trained me. And that's where I got that definition, an inner state of peace and well-being that doesn't depend on happiness. And it's just, at least for now, my favorite definition of happiness ever, because it's so soft and liberating and authentic and achievable.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of research right now on positive psychology and happiness, and I'm forgetting the name of the woman from Yale who created the happiness course. I'm sure
Oh,
you
yeah.
know of this, and I know it doesn't matter.
We're both working with these menopausal brains, and I can't
Right.
remember her name right now, but I can see her logo.
Yes, yeah. So I know that's where I think I started. I remember when that course first came out, and that sort of, just that the idea of happiness and well, not the idea, but because we already know about happiness, but just it brought it, I think, into more of the mainstream way to
Yeah.
just think about how to.
And so, I take all of that, but it's also very much my own life experience of not feeling happy at a point in my life, feeling pretty freaking miserable, and finding my way back to the woman I remembered from before I went through lots of hardships. Each piece, I've read so many books and followed so many teachers, and ultimately, we each have a journey to take back to ourselves, right? And if we're not happy currently, we probably can remember a time when we were. And that's why I asked that question, what makes you feel alive? Because we can tap back into before life weighed us down, maybe figuratively, maybe literally. And we get to liberate the essence of who we are to create and cultivate our own happiness. And it looks different for everybody. And we can follow a similar journey to get there.
Yeah, that sounds like good next steps. So I have just a final question because right now I don't know, what I'm hearing just out in the world is people are really stressed out about the war in Israel, like things, I mean, it's really consuming people a lot. So how do we try to stay positive when just awful things are happening?
You don't have to try to stay positive, right? Like I've said it a few times, like you get to feel your feelings and you don't want to stay there if they're lower, more depleting uh, emotions, like that overwhelming sadness. So, number one, turn off the TV, turn off the news, turn it off. Just, you don't have to know everything that's happening all over the world every minute. If you want to be informed, good, and give yourself a limit of time. 15 minutes a day, you listen to your preferred news provider, or 15 minutes a day, you read the news. I prefer reading to hearing or watching because we can keep our minds cleaner when we're the ones creating the images, right? So if you're reading, maybe you just see the words, maybe you create images in your mind. That's what I do when I read, but it's not ever going to be as destructive as what you're going to see on the television. So take what gets into your brain because it all gets into there. Whatever you're watching, listening to, reading, it's affecting you. So we want to really be mindful, just like we are with our diet, of the mental diet, what's coming into our brains. So please, please, please turn off the news. Do not turn it on in the first 30 minutes of your day or the last, I would say, 2 hours of your day. The first 30 minutes of your day can set the tone for your entire day. And here's another little research fun fact is people who are exposed to something very negative, like the war, in the first 30 minutes of their day, report a lower mood up to 12 hours later. So it is literally, so that first 30 minutes of your day, make it sacred. Choose what you're going to say to yourself when you put your feet on the floor first thing in the morning. Choose how you're going to caretake yourself first thing in the day. Don't scroll with your coffee, journal with your coffee. Start with a breath work, a meditation, that ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Wake up that day. You get to create a sacred ritual that supports you instead of sabotages your entire day. Really, 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 really be mindful of your news intake. That is my number one happiness rule.
And I love that, the self-care practice in the morning for the first 30 minutes. I do that myself, and it's just a nice way to ease in the day. And I have officially turned the TV off. I don't watch news at all anymore. I mean, unless I'm watching the weather or something, but because it's just crazy making.
It is, and we're going to see it. It's pretty hard to stay completely in a closet of knowing.
Of course. Yeah.
You're going to see it. You're going to turn on the radio. You're going to hear something. You're going to open your phone. You're going to see something. So the more that we can control that, the happier we will eventually be.
Well, Tamara, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. And I think that I've gone from, you hear sometimes in the world, like, just be happy, just be, and that's so much easier said than done. I mean, you can't just turn on like the happiness switch. It sounds like from talking to you, you need skills and habits and tools. And you certainly have that. And you've done tons of research and, and know the science behind how to get happy. So thank you so much for sharing that. And how can people get in touch with you?
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to be here. And of course, this is my favorite topic. People can reach out to me through my website, alifeyoulovenow.com. I have a blog, I share some videos, all my upcoming courses or group programs are there. I'm also most active on Facebook and Instagram. And my name, there's I think one other Tamara Zoner in the world, and she's Hispanic and all her stuff will be in Spanish. So that's not me.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
have a private Facebook group where I'm consistently sharing, happiness tips and a little bit of research and just encouragement to members to go a little bit deeper in their journey of self. And that is called Create a Life You Love Now. And I would love to see people there too.
Okay. Well, I will definitely put all of those links in the show notes so people can access it that way too. So thank you so much. This has been really a insightful conversation.
Thank you. My pleasure, Heather.
And as always, if you loved this podcast, please consider gifting me with a 5-star review. It is so helpful for me to get the word out on real eating, our real bodies, and real food stories. Thank you so much and have a great week. Bye for now.